Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening for what will certainly be a most productive series of speakers. We are very fortunate to have a partnership with JCCRP Greater Coney Island and their career services, led by Rabbi Yoshua Wordy, who is a real expert when it comes to career exploration, job placement, and many of those important skill sets. Coronavirus is a crazy time, challenging time for everybody here. One of the advantages of this time is that we've all become more accustomed to Zooming, Zoom conferences, and Zoom classes. And because of that, Rabbi Wordy had the foresight to plan a Zoom webinar. This is part one of a 4-part series. And really, we could take advantage of this time where most of us are at home or at home more than we generally would be. And it's a great time to work on our resumes, to work on our interviewing skills. I know as an employer, and an employee as well, I've been on both sides of the interview table. I've been interviewed, I have interviewed many people, and there's a lot that weighing on the interview. You know, the resume is also very important. That's the first image, you know, that has to separate you from the other candidates. So we're going to hear Brad Siegel, an expert on how to write your resume and perfect it. He's going to give us tricks of the trade. And then we are going to hear from Jeffrey Prince on how to ace the interview. Both of these are vital, probably the two most vital components to landing a job. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want everyone to know that after each presenter presents, there will be a chance to do Q&A. You can ask them questions in the question and answer box. Additionally, I want everyone to know that this is not only an introduction to Brad and Jeffrey, but this is an introduction to some of the things that go on at the JCCRP and our career services. And if anyone has any follow-up requests to either get help from Brad or Jeffrey or other JCCRP services, please don't hesitate to reach out. The email address is quite simple: info @jccrp.org, and we are glad to help you with anything you need help with during these times and always. So without further ado, you didn't come here to hear me. I welcome Brad Siegel. He will be discussing perfecting resume, and then Brad will then introduce Jeffrey Prince. Thank you for joining us, Brad. We appreciate it.
Sounds good. Good to be here. Let me just share here. This will work tonight. Okay, good evening. Thanks, Moshe. So we're talking about resumes, and resume is really it's your main marketing piece. It's really the thing that'll get you in the door, at least for an interview. So it's definitely something you want to be thoughtful about and put a little bit of time in. So I'm just going to cover some of the basics of resume, and hopefully there's some things for people that have not put a resume together, or maybe they have some things that maybe they could use in terms of improving it. So just from the very start, I just want to make the point that there really is not one way to make a resume. There's many ways you can create a resume. However, there are certain components that are across the board on all resumes, but at least it gives you a little bit of freedom to make it the way you want it. If I was going to give you like a bottom line rule of thumb, that is that you want to make sure your resume is really clear and concise and to the point, so that when somebody looks at your resume, within those first few minutes, they really get a picture of you, but a good picture of you, but pretty quickly. So you don't want it to be overly wordy and too long. You want it really pretty clear and concise and crisp. Of course, also that means you don't want to have typos and spelling errors, so make sure you have other people take a look at it once you've created one. If you can, try to keep your resume to 1 page. It's not so easy for people. If you're starting out more in your career, it's a lot easier. If you've been around a while, you've been working a while, it's very difficult. So, okay, if you're going to 1.5 pages, it's okay. If you've been working a long time, 2 pages is okay. I mean, hiring managers and recruiters, they expect that. But as much as you can, try to just, keep it down. Again, if you can make it to one page, great. Some of the traditional fonts that are used are Calibri, Arial, Times New Roman, and Cambria. You can use Microsoft Word and Google Docs. And as I said, all resumes really have some of the same components across the board, even though you can use a little creativity. So number one is the top of your resume has that contact information. That's really important. You want to make that very easy for recruiters or hiring managers to be able to contact you. Below that is a summary or objective, and we'll talk more about that. The heart of your resume is your experience below that. Then you have education and you have a skills section. I have 2 asterisks by the summary or objective and the skills because those things you do not have to have in your resume, but we would highly recommend in most cases that you have both of them. So just to take a look at the components on a sample resume. So you can see at the top, that's the contact information, Chris Jones, and they have their phone number and email address. A lot of people in 2020 aren't putting their actual home address. You can if you like. A lot of people would put in their LinkedIn address up there. So again, just clearly so people can contact you easily. Below that's the career. They're calling them in this sample kind of an objective. It's kind of a mixture of an objective and a summary. And just to read, a licensed certified CPA with over 6 years of experience, et cetera, seeking to apply diverse accounting and administrative knowledge as a supervising accountant at your company. It's kind of a mix of both summarizing a little bit who this person is and an objective. We'll talk about the difference in a moment. But either way, it's a nice snapshot of who you are, which is why it's really recommended you'd have something there. Below that is the, as I said, the heart of the resume, which is the experience. And this is what we'll call a chronological resume. So you want to start with your most recent experience on top. And just, this is a very traditional format. And, I like it, I recommend it, where you put first the name of the organization, in this case, McIntyre Human Resource. And then right below that, your title, you put the place where where it's located right next to it, and then the times you're there. As I mentioned at other times, HR people like to see the months in addition to the years. If you've been working a long time, you probably can just put years, but again, that's your call. In most cases, people do like to see months also. So then you put down, using bullet points and action verbs, some of the main accomplishments that you've done in your job. And if you can even quantify it, it's great. So if you could see one below, this person has the 5th one, manage multiple client accounts totaling over $75 million. So this person quantified it, and I think they'll consider that one of the major accomplishments. It's not always easy to come up with accomplishments in terms of your job, and certainly to quantify it. At the very least, think about what are the main things you did at your job, even if they're not, big accomplishments. If you can, great, and quantify them, great. But if not, at least main things you did at the position. Like, for example, this person's second bullet point is conduct and oversee periodic financial audits. So this is where you want to spend a good time brainstorming and thinking through your experience. It's also helpful for your interviewing. So it's good to really put in your time thinking through those main things you did at the job. If you're somebody coming in who has no job experience, think about volunteer experience, and you can call it volunteer experience. We've worked with people coming from Colel, for example, and they have examples of things they might have done in terms of fundraising for a dinner. So if you could think of something, if you're new to the workforce, think of something that you did and you'll call it volunteer experience, but then use the same format. You could say, again, the name of the organization where you volunteered, your title, and some bullet points. So that's the crux of experience, and that, again, a very important piece. Below that is education. And you want to put, if you have a college degree in a college you went to, if you have a high school degree, or if no degree, you just went to high school, anything that shows education. It could be online courses you've taken. If you took a class at the JCC in Far Rockaway, you could show that. And there's a little bit of an order, but that doesn't really matter. Just show, what that education is. And it's up to you if you want to show the year or maybe a description. And then finally, there's a skills section, which is actually very important. And we'll talk more about skills in a moment. But just to go a little bit back on objective versus summary, it used to be objective was very popular and everybody had an objective on their resume. These days, most people are using summaries. Here's an example: experienced retail management person, et cetera, et cetera. And it gives, as I said, a good snapshot of who you are. People do like to see it. However, objectives are good too. There aren't situations where you can always use a summary. For example, if you're new to the workforce, you don't have anything to summarize, or let's say you want to change careers. So summarizing what you've been doing isn't going to be helpful. So in those cases, go to an objective. An objective is really helping you target a position, which is also very helpful. It just, most people are using summaries today. If you are new to the workforce and you really know what you want to do, then use an objective. If you don't know what you want to do and you're new to the workforce, then you can leave this whole area blank. You don't have to have an objective or a summary. In terms of the skills sections become a really important section on the resume. And to think of your skills, think of differentiating between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills, you could think of, they tend to be computer related. They don't have to be. They tend to be very related to a particular position, QuickBooks, payroll, software, data analysis, things like that. And soft skills are just what those are: being organized, being a good communicator, maybe you can manage people well. Whatever the case is, there's all kinds of soft skills, and they're both very important. Also very important, though, is if you are looking at a job description and you see in the job description looking for somebody in QuickBooks, it says that in the job description, and you have QuickBooks. So obviously you want to make sure that's front and clear in your in your skills section in general. So make sure you look at the job description and get anything in there that you can add to your skills section. It'll just help you and up your chances of being seen. Some other examples of hard and soft skills, you could take a look here on the left side, or Microsoft Office, Adobe. Again, it doesn't have to be necessarily computer related. For example, if somebody's interviewing to be a chef, you know, ingredient selection might be a hard skill. So it really depends on what the position is. And these are some examples on the right side of soft skills. Most companies, you might say, edge out, give a little bit more importance or significance to hard skills. But soft skills can be just as important, especially if you're trying to get into a large company. Large companies will really look at your soft skills. They want to see that you can, you know, work with people well. If you're in a matrix situation, you know, how you maybe manage people. So soft skills are very important also. So make sure that you have some for both if you can. Now, in terms of skills, you can really put them at the top of the resume or the bottom. IT people tend to put it at the top, and that's a great way to advertise their skills. I mean, they want to show, you know, some of the software languages they might know. Again, most IT people do it. Anybody can really do it based on any profession if there are really some kind of skills you want to show up front. But you can see the person on the right, they put their skills on the bottom, and that's just fine. And that works very well also. So consider putting that skills section at the top or the bottom based on the relevance of what you want to do. So then, you know, I think it's kind of a known fact that people don't look at resumes real long. They look at them quite quickly. So that makes that top third of the resume very important, which means that they're going to look at that summary or objective. They're going to look at that first job, and they're going to pay a lot of attention to that. So you want to make sure that top third of your resume looks good. And as I just mentioned before about looking at job descriptions, if some of you are familiar with what are called ATSs, applicant tracking systems, a lot of the larger companies use them. Most Fortune 1000 companies use them. So when a hiring manager is putting a job description together, there's going to be certain key words, very significant words in there that they're going to be looking for the position. So if you take a look at that, and if you see some prominent words and you put those in your skills section or in your experience section, obviously it has to be truthful, it has to be real experience and real skills. But if you can do that, that'll really up your chances of being seen by the recruiter or by the hiring manager. So you want to really do anything you can to try to just up your chances. So again, that's kind of the look of the resume. These are the basic components. When I'm working with people, just to get them moving, I kind of give them something basic like this, just to start looking at a basic format and just start thinking through some of, you know, their experience and education and skills. And just a note about online resumes. There's a lot of nice online templates for resumes. I mean, I recommend that they be free. There are some online. I was working with somebody recently, and I was showing him one, and then he actually found one for $2 that was really nice. But in general, I don't promote anybody spending money online if they don't have to. But what you'll also find is that some of the online templates will give a little more of a creative look. Now, I give you the very traditional format. They might change it out a little bit, but that's fine also. But some of these can make you stand out a little bit. So that's something to look into also. So just in summary, and then I can hand it off to Jeffrey. Make sure you make your resume really easy to read, really concise to the point. Make that top 1/3 kind of stand out, a good snapshot and a good positive snapshot of who you are. Make sure to proofread it, have other, if your friends proofread it. And if you can, try to relate it to some kind of specific job description.
Bension,
yes.
Take 5 minutes of Q&A. I see there's some questions right now. Take 5 minutes of Q&A and then we'll pass on to Jeff.
You got it.
Sure. Here's the first question. I'll read them to you. Do you recommend many short bullets or fewer, maybe a bit longer?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, I think what you want to do is make the bullet. First, you want to start with an action verb, and I think you want to just state it in such a way that it sounds good. Now, that could be 6 words, that could be 9 words. You definitely don't want to have 28 words on a bullet. I mean, it could be 15. I can't really give you a measurement as to how long the bullet should be, but I think you can test it out when you say it out loud or say it to somebody else. If they really get it and they're almost impressed by it, let's say.
Okay, next question. Yeah. Seems, and if anyone is listening, post your questions on the Q&A section. We'll try to get to them. Seems that soft skills can sound generic. What do you recommend people do to differentiate themselves?
Well, I think you want to think about yourself and also ask other people for soft skills that really describe you. I don't think they're necessarily generic, especially if it really can describe who you are. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In addition, there are soft skills that might be a little different than the run-of-the-mill saying good communication. You can try to be more specific, and that could also help you stand out. But in general, I think through, this is kind of getting in touch with yourself a little bit, your experience, who you are, ask your friends, family, and hopefully there's some that'll help you stand out.
Okay, next question. How many skills do you recommend so it's not overkill?
It's a good question. I mean, I see generally like 6 to 8 with people, maybe 6 to 10, 6 to 8, 7, 8, 9. I don't want to give a exacting number. It's very much dependent on the way your resume looks. It's also dependent on relevance, how relevant it is for the kind of job you're going for and you're coming from. So I almost have to look at people's resumes to see if it looks like overkill or not. So without being too exacting on that.
All right, next question, and you already touched on this before, so just be very brief. Does font matter?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So there are traditional fonts, but you'll see online that they're using funky fonts. And I actually, my own resume recently, I changed to have a version into a funky font that I saw. It's not a bad idea maybe to have a few versions, maybe depending on who you're sending it to. But I think they're all good. I mean, again, the traditional fonts work very well. If the font is, again, you don't want to get too funky, too off, as long as it looks good, looks presentable. I think you could be open. I don't want to commit too much on that. Again,
okay, this next question, somebody asked, who do I email? I just wanted, for everybody listening, for those of you that want to work on your resume, Bension is available to assist. You just reach out to the JCCRP and say you want to be in touch with Bension, and they'll facilitate a phone meeting, and he'll be happy to help you personally, one by one, free of charge. It's a free service. We have 2 questions left. Let's answer them quickly because I want to get to the next segment with Jeff. So somebody asked, how many years of experience should you include on a resume beyond 15, 20? Your thoughts?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. There's some rules of thumb on that. you know, one thing I would tell you without being exacting on that is have a few versions of your resume. You might want to have a version of your resume that is like your last 10 years or last 15 years. You might want to have a full resume just for that, you know, that one possibility. But, you know, I would think 10 to 15 years is generally what people are going back to on experience. I've seen this question come up a lot, so it's gonna be specific, you know, with certain situations.
Okay, there's one last question here. You have 1 minute to answer it, though. We must get started with the next segment. I have had interviewers judge me harshly. They say it's pathetic. Someone my age has done so little based on my resume. Any advice?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't quite get that.
I've had interviewers, you could see this yourself on the Q&A, judge me harshly. They say it's pathetic someone my age has done so little based on my resume. In other words, they look at the resume and they don't see enough. Any advice? And I just, to the person who asked this question, Ben-Cian doesn't have much time to answer, but you could be in touch.
I would, yeah, I would be happy to talk to that person individually over the phone.
Okay, so let's
talk about that.
Yes, please reach out. Please reach out. We have to go to the next segment. So those of you that someone just posted a question right now, again, just reach out to JCCRP. Ben-Cian will speak to you anytime tomorrow, anytime this week to help you answer your questions and help you work on your resume. So without further ado, Ben-Cian, thank you as always for the awesome presentation. We're going to introduce now Jeffrey Prince, who's going to talk about the interview, how to ace your interview, because that's, you know, together with your resume gets you in the door, but once you're in the door, you got to make that amazing first impression. So Jeff, please come on, and Ben-Cian, if you want to hang around and answer questions later or sign off, it's whatever works for you.
Okay.
So, Jeff, please come on.
Hi, how are you?
Ben-Cian, you shut off your camera and your mic.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, and very happy to be here tonight. I think Ben-Cian did a fabulous presentation on resumes and how important they are. And obviously, good resumes will also lead to getting an interview. And that's what I'm going to be discussing on how to ace the interview, or at least how to do the interview to the best you can. I do have a PowerPoint. Let me just see.
We see it. We see it.
No, that's not.
It looks like a resume PowerPoint.
No. Okay, so all right, very good. So let's just to get started here. You know, the goal of an interview is really to identify whether a candidate is or is not an ideal match for a company. And a lot of ways to look at it is, you know, it's really an interview is like a shidduch date. The same, you know, the exact same way you would prepare for a shidduch date. And I'm thinking appearance, you know, look, being prompt, respectful, manners, all of that is how you're going to prepare for an interview. And in many ways, you know, it is. I mean, your job interview is, you know, if it leads to employment, you know, a job is a shidduch. It's between you and an employer. So very much, you know, getting ready for an interview is the same way as getting ready for a shidduch date. There are several types of interviews. Telephone screening interview is most likely going to be the first step. The employer or hiring manager will be reaching out to you to do a quick phone screen. They may even first send you an email or a text that they received your resume and would like to speak to you. And this is actually important because, you know, they are getting many resumes for every candidate, for every job they have. And they are indeed looking to screen out as many people as they can. So if they send you an email or a text about setting up a time for an interview and you don't even get back to them, that's it, you're done. Even if, you know, you have the phone screen, they're judging you very much. It's almost like, again, you know, you're thinking shit update. You may be on the phone, whatever, setting things up with the shotgun, or even setting things up with the other party. You really, they're judging you. How do you sound on the phone? Do you sound nice, professional, someone they would even want to meet? How do you come across? Are you using slang? Are you not being audible? Again, all of that is being done all of that is being taken in during the telephone screening process. Ideally, if it goes well, it's going to lead to an in-person interview. And again, with the in-person interview, you have to think of all the variables of again, a shidduch date, punctuality, appearance, grooming, your manners, communications. I honestly, and I'm addressing this more to the men than the women who are listening in, but women will always, I think, look good. They just, will have a natural, ability to put their best foot forward. Men, you cannot go to an interview with an untucked shirt or a pair of jeans or clothes that aren't clean, or to think that you could wear, say, sandals or sneakers, or that all of that, you're judged, as Ben was saying before, like they're looking at a resume and they're making a judgment based on the first 10, 15 seconds of looking at the resume. They're judging you really in the first 10 to 15 seconds. Can you be a fit for the company? And their first appearance certainly counts. And, again, even with a shidduch date, first appearances count for so much. Ideally, if an in-person interview, by the way, may become, it's possible you start with one person, they will bring in their colleagues, you may be interviewing with the HR person, they may in turn bring in the head of the company to meet with you, they may bring in the direct department head of where you would be working. So again, a group interview, an in-person interview can become a group or panel interview. It's not a bad thing, but it can throw you off. I understand, talking to one person is difficult. Talking to 2 or 3 people at once can be very daunting, but don't let your nerves overtake you. Do the best you can, answer the questions as best you can. It's not on the PowerPoint, but obviously now, especially in the world we're in, the post-COVID world, Zoom interviews may very well be the norm for the next few months, if not longer. And with Zoom interviews, you have to take them every bit as seriously as an in-person interview. You have to be dressed properly. You have to have your Zoom, the camera set up in the right place in your home or apartment so that you could have a conversation without noise or distractions. You do have to be dressed appropriately. You can't just because you're in your home think that you can, do the interview, say, in your pajamas and it's going to be acceptable, or in a bathrobe, or that you want to have a mug of coffee or drink or eat or drink at the same time. These are all serious no-nos and will definitely shoot you in both feet. So again, bear all these things in mind. And I'm just going to say appearance just one last time because it is so important. It's really the interviewer is making judging you as much by your manners and look as by your skills. I mean, you may have a dozen people who all basically could bring the same skill set to a job, but again, they're making it sometimes on those subjective things, the look, the manner, the communication skills, all of which are important. And yes, they do play appearance does play a major part in whether you will or will not get a job. So I just, there are several questions that are considered, the most commonly asked questions at job interviews, and we're going to go through them quickly. I just want to say that, there are certain questions that should not be asked, and I think, just to discuss that for a moment, you should not be asked your age. That is not an employer's prerogative to ask your age. You should not necessarily be asked about your marital status. I suppose if women are covering their hair, that's sort of a given. But even then, they should not be asking whether you are married, divorced, separated, or widowed. They should not be asking whether you have children or you don't have children, or the ages of your children. These are all sometimes in especially when you're doing interviews in Orthodox companies, and it's a Hamish environment, and sometimes there's a feeling of, well, it's just between us. But even then, I think you really, I suppose if you're, let's say you are looking, say, to you're a mother with children of a certain age, and you do want to sort of have a job that ends at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, maybe then you do need to say it. But in other respects, you don't have to say it. And especially age, again, there is a lot of age discrimination out there. It is unfortunate, but it's just real, and it's as true in the firm world as it is in the general populace. I think outside of New York, it may be a little better, but we just, we're so youth focused in the city that, age does become a factor. So again, just realize that you do have certain rights about what you answer and what you don't. You could always say politely, I don't know I don't think that really relates to the job, and I prefer not to answer it. So the questions that they may ask, tell me about yourself. Again, you just want to discuss your education, your work experience, and your future aspirations. You really don't want it to be about, well, what you do in your spare time, or whether you like to collect stamps, or whether you like to bake challah, or you like to cook. I suppose you can say something like that for a brief moment, but it's really to keep it professional and on point. It's really what you did in the past, what are you doing now, and really what are you looking to do down the road. How did you hear about this position? Again, if you want to say you were referred by a friend, or you saw the job posting on a specific website, that's fine. But you do want to keep it germane, again, why you thought this was a great fit for you at this time. And to, again, always answer questions as briefly as you can. Yes or no answers are usually frowned on, but long, verbose answers are not good either. So you just want to try to, get answer it in a couple of short sentences. The next question, which is fairly common, tell me what you know about our company. Here is where you really want to show that you, did your research, and that you did, look at most companies, even small ones, have websites. You want to make it a point to look at the website. They may even tell you to do that, before the interview. When you have your phone screen, for example, they may say, look at our website before you come in. You do want to make sure, look, if they don't have websites, look at social media. Maybe they've done some things on Facebook or Instagram or any other, social media platform, and or any, just even talk to people that work there, if you know them, just to get a sense of who they are, because you really want to show that you did your homework, and that you are going in knowing something, and that you really do want to, be a part of it. So they are looking to see what information you have and how well you could answer the question. Again, this is another question, may not be asked exactly like this, but what are your strengths? So again, this is where you're not looking to come across as too cocky or like, the world revolves around you, but you just want to, say, things that would make sense given what you're interviewing for. You could talk about your strong communication skills, if that is, important. Language skills, your ability to be flexible. You can use words like detail-oriented, professional, fast learner, team player, organized, multitask. And again, with language skills, if they are indeed germane to the job, yes. And again, so many people in the firm world don't think about that. But even if, whatever, I mean, if you could speak, Israel is a major player in so many areas right now. So knowledge of Hebrew, or even conversational level Ivrit, all these things are important. Again, we could go over this. I'm happy, to do this with people one-on-one, but strengths are important. An even harder question that really does throw people off often is what are your weaknesses? And this is often the question that really people stumble on. You don't want to say something that will really, shoot you in the foot. Like, well, to be quite honest, I'm not a morning person, or I don't like people telling me what to do, or I don't want anyone talking to me before noon or before I have 3 cups of coffee. These are not what they want to hear. If anything, what you really need to do is to be strategic and take a strength in and make it a weakness. For example, I'm a very, very detail-oriented person and I want to make sure I get the job right. Or I really want the customer or the client to be satisfied, and I will take the extra, few steps to make sure that the client or the customer is satisfied. It's possible you could also say something if you do want to, show what you're working on, not that I don't know a specific computer program, but you can say, I'm very comfortable with Microsoft Word. I am less powerful with PowerPoint, and I am working to improve my skills with that. Or I have a basic knowledge of Excel, but I am working on improving my Excel skills. That shows them that you're cognizant and that you're working on something. But you never want to show, that you would be a negative person to bring into the workplace. And again, for both strengths and weaknesses, it is important to keep them professional. Okay, and they may ask about your greatest professional achievement. I mean, again, here you just want to, you just want to say something that again, if you have, maybe it was dealing with the challenging customer interactions, or if it was doing making a certain goal, perhaps you were able to raise sales to a certain level, or perhaps it was taking a workflow process and improving on it. That's what you'd want to say here. If you didn't necessarily have a lot of professional experience, you could also take it from your maybe volunteer or early work experience, even working, say, in a camp setting, or, I was able to, get my campers to, really, behave and listen. So it's just trying to take, where you were and having something to say about it. You could say, they may ask you, tell me about a time when you faced a challenge or a conflict and how you were able to resolve it. You just want to try to have some stories prepared. If you don't have, again, professional work experience, you can take this from volunteer work, or even from camp, or even from school settings. Okay, and again, if I'm going to give everyone my contact information, we could always discuss these things on a one-on-one setting. Again, this question about, that employers ask, what are your salary expectations? This, again, can be a tricky point. You really want to come across as flexible when they ask you this. Obviously, if you are working for 15 years or 10 years and you really can't go below a certain level, I guess you have to be realistic about, where you are and what you need. I would say in life, sometimes especially if you're unemployed at the moment, salary expectations are much easier to negotiate, obviously, when you have a job and you're looking to go to another one. When you don't have a job and you need the job at hand, you do have to be much more flexible. So, again, as I was saying, you may have to take 2 steps back or 1 step back to take 2 steps forward, or even 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. These are things that people have to do in their life. And so I would say too, whatever it is, you can just sound flexible. I'm looking, for the right opportunity, and I really think I would be a great candidate for this job. Again, you also should bear in mind, if there are benefits, you should ask them necessarily what they are, but if you do know by looking at their website or talking to people that they have benefits with the job, bear that in mind in your calculations, because benefits are important. Just again, very quickly, the do's and don'ts. And, I'm just going to talk on the don'ts, very, very important. Again, don't ever be dishonest. Don't make negative comments about a former employer or supervisor. That is the worst thing you can do, truly. Don't do silly things like chew gum candy, as I said before, drink, coffee or something during an interview. Don't ramble or use slang. Don't say silly words, or, say things to look cool that will definitely not look good and they will, turn the employer off. Do not ask about benefits. You should not ask about benefits or salary at the first interview. Okay, if they ask, but you should not ask, and do avoid yes or no answers. Okay, those are not good. You want to have short, simple sentences. And again, try not to fidget, with your beard or hair or whatever. Also, big no-nos, make sure your cell phone is turned off, and never, ever answer a cell phone during an interview. I don't know. I remember once, a candidate thinking it was such a casual thing and that he didn't do anything wrong. And I said, it was just the worst thing you could have done. The employer just mouth was open, that didn't realize the candidate didn't even realize he was doing a huge no-no in answering a cell phone call. So these are all, again, very important. Again, just real quick, I know we're going over a little over my time. So you are allowed to also ask the interviewer a few questions as well. They may want you, it is usually a good thing to at least have 1 or 2 questions to ask them. You should not bombard them with a whole list of questions that may turn them off. But I would say, probably 2 or 3 questions is okay. Make sure they're very pertinent. You could ask them, for instance, what are the primary responsibilities about the position that I'm applying for? Let them say what they're looking for. You could also, also ask them other opportunities for professional and personal growth and advancement in the company. I guess a larger company, that makes more sense to answer. You can definitely ask them when they're prepared to make a decision. And that gives you, a little, to get a sense of, are they interviewing 50 people or maybe it's just a few people? Listen to the words they're saying. And that gives you a sense of what your next steps are. Always try to get their email address and or business card before you leave. So this way you can follow up with them. So many times people just, we're discussing what happened at the interview and I said, okay, so do you have their email? And they don't have it. They didn't ask, they don't have it. They can't follow up. They can't send a thank you letter. This is why it's so important to make sure that you get that email address or a business card, certainly, or at least the email address if they don't have a card. And the thank you email is so important. It is really, what will set you apart from everyone else. And just again, your thank you note is short and concise, as Ben-Sion said about the, parts of the resume. You don't want to bombard them, but you want to let them know, you want to send this within 24 hours of the interview. You're thanking them for their time. If they had issues or concerns, you're addressing it. You're just letting them know you're interested and that you think you have all based on the conversation, that you believe you would be a great fit for their organization, and you are looking forward to hearing back from them about next steps. Proofread always, and certainly before you send it, you want to make sure that you have your name, your cell, and your email. You cannot put that down too often, because that's your primary way of being contacted, your cell and your email address. Okay, and so that's really on my end, and I'm happy to take questions.
Jeff, thank you for that awesome presentation. So everyone that's listening, we're going to do some questions for Jeff, and Ben-Sion is also here. He'll also have questions you have about the resume. So here's a question for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Should someone bring a hard copy of their resume to the interview?
Yes, without a doubt. I would even say bring 2 or 3, because again, even though nowadays, it sounds like, oh, it's old-fashioned, you still want to have a nice copy of your resume to hand out at interviews, or at least copies of your resume, okay? When I'm old enough now to remember when people used to do fancy, nice bond paper, different colors, whatever, to stand out, but always bring at least 1. And again, given that you may be meeting with more than 1 person at the interview, probably 2 or 3 copies.
Awesome. I apologize. Before we continue with the questions, I forgot to mention again, first of all, this is number 1 of a 4-part series. Tomorrow night we'll be here again, 8 o'clock. It's actually going to be an amazing presentation by Mark Alpert, how to deal with your finances during this time. For those of you that might have lost a job or are struggling, there's all sorts of programs that are out there. For those that need help budgeting, that's going to be tomorrow night. And then Wednesday and Thursday, we have an excellent presentation from the Wayfair. People are going to talk about career opportunities that are going on right now during these times. So stay with us each night of the week. And again, Jeff and Benzion, both presenters, are available to speak to you one-on-one, free of charge. So if you would like to follow up, please reach out to the JCCRP, and they'll facilitate a free meeting by phone for them to help you with your resume, and with if you're getting ready for an interview and you want some presentation, some help to make sure you ace it. So please reach out. Okay, so Jeff, the next question we have here, and anyone that's listening, if you have questions, post them on the Q&A. We'll try to get to them. Do you dress for the job in you're interviewing for? A dress to impress? Oh, in other words, is there such a thing as overdressing, or can you dress casual to the interview?
Well, okay. It's a very good question, and yes, you should, to an extent. Yeah, you should never underdress, because overdressing is once you're underdressing. If you're going to work as a say in a warehouse, for a warehouse position, I'm not saying you need to wear a really dapper suit, shirt, and tie, and look like you're the CEO of the company. However, again, I think you need to bear in mind, to always dress professionally, never less than business casual. So if you're gonna, should always be a dress shirt, I think you should always have a nice pair of dress slacks or khaki slacks. Shoes, never sneakers or sandals. I think you should always look good, shirt tucked in. I'm talking to the men now, because again, the women will always, I think, look good. But again, and maybe, I don't know, for the man, if you're not wearing a tie to the interview, maybe take a moment before you walk in there, take a look and see how the others are dressed. If they're all wearing ties, you should have a tie in your pocket to quickly put it on, so that you look the part. I think, again, better to be a little overdressed than underdressed. All right, that's my best answer. We can always take it on a case by case.
Here's another question for you. How do you answer salary requirements given the current environment? Have salaries been impacted?
Yeah, that is, again, a very important question. It's a hard question. Salaries, look, we understand we have families, or we have situations. Again, as I said, try to say I'm as flexible as I could be, or I'm flexible for the right opportunity. See what they say. Again, they may say we're prepared to, pay a certain amount, and we'll review in 3 to 6 months. It's also based on whether they're going to be benefits or not to the job. So I think you should do a little research on that. The employer sometimes will, give a sense of what their range is, but you don't want to come in too high. I mean, I guess you could say too, for instance, I was earning $50,000 on my last job, but right now I am flexible for the right opportunity, and leave it like that, and see what the employer or the hiring manager says.
Okay, this is a question that was to Benzion. Are you still here, Benzion?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody asked the following question, and please, if any of you listening have more questions, feel free to post them on the Q&A. I am 34 and coming out of Kollel. Is relaying my age a good thing because it may show maturity, or the contrary?
Well,
Either of you.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, without getting into age, what I had mentioned earlier in the presentation is to think about experience you might have in addition to Kollel, and that might just be volunteer experience. So if you don't have any paying job experience, any experience that you have that's related to work, you can put on your resume. I don't think you need to get into age per se. It doesn't really need to show. I mean, you just want to show your experience and your education, and etc.
Yeah, I just want to agree with everything that Benzion said. You should never mention age.
Yeah.
It's really off the table at a job interview. It's not even legal to ask that. Again, whether you're 34 or 24 or 44, it's just you really want to show your experience. That's why even with resumes, when you went to school, you shouldn't, if let's say you even graduating high school, you shouldn't have a year with your high school graduation, or a year, say, if you completed college, university. It dates you, and it doesn't serve a purpose. Especially as we get older, we don't want them to date us and say no and throw us into the throw the resume in the wastebasket. So yeah, I'd say, as Benzion said, just focus on your experience and what's translatable.
Okay, so it looks like We've reached the end of the Q&A. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Jeff, Pension, tremendous presentations. I want to wish all of you a wonderful evening. Moshe, are you still here?
Of course, I am still here. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Rabbi Wordy. Thank you, Brad and Jeff. That was really fantastic. Thank you for all the attendees. Tomorrow evening, 8 p.m., we will have Mark Alpert. He's a financial expert. Please join us. Please tell your friends. No matter who you are, you can use financial counseling advice. I know I certainly can. So please help spread the word. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
All right.